in Maryland. In Maryland, it's 20 degrees here in Maryland, and I am Zoha means light. And I wanted to hop on and go live today because I just had an epiphany that I've been fleshing out over the last over a long time. If you don't know me, my name is Zoha, and I'm a certified yoga teacher, certified Reiki practitioner, trauma informed wellness facilitator, and counselor. I do a lot of work with women around their healing, and especially childhood trauma and how to release things that no longer serve you. And using yoga and Reiki and other healing modalities to do that. So today, I wanted to talk real briefly about creating while you're healing. Okay? So, creating is your divine right. Creating is your divine right. I'm going to say that one more time. Let me get my mic. I got it right. I got it turned the right way. There it goes. Creating is your divine right. It's your divine right. You have a right to create. A lot of times we think that we don't have a right to create because we don't think people are going to be interested in our creation. The first thing that I recognized on my road to creating was getting out of my own way and not worrying about what other people think about what I'm creating, because I'm not creating for other people. I'm creating for myself. Whether other people benefit from that creation, that's cool. But I'm creating because it's my inalienable divine right as a human being. I came out of creation into creation, and therefore I create. You were created, and it never stops happening. You get to keep creating. So whatever you're creating, whether it's something that is physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, whatever you're creating, it deserves to be here. You have the right to do that. Now, one of the pitfalls of creating while healing that I've been running up against and that I'm learning to navigate is because I have a huge trauma body. And your trauma body is the part of yourself that is used to being in traumatic situations because it's had, a lot of encounters that were traumatic. Meaning, whatever traumatic is for you, right? So, trauma is something that changes the original state of something. So, if you've been changed from your original state, you've had trauma occur in your life. So, my trauma body is huge because I've had a lot of trauma in my youth. And I have to constantly navigate that as an adult because even with therapy, in therapy again right now, even with therapy, you have to be aware of your triggers. And your triggers are things that set the alarm off in your trauma body. So, like, a trigger would be like if you were leaving your house and you didn't put your passcode in your alarm, and then, the alarm went off and called the police. That's how it works in your body. The police is your trauma. The police is your trauma. Your trauma going to show up. It's going to defend itself. It's going to defend you. It's going to do its job. It's going to remind you, hey, 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 hey. Like Kendrick said, that's my shit. It's going to remind you that you have soft spot here. And you're going to do everything you can, everything you know how to do to protect yourself. And that might be violence. It might be shutting down. It might be getting away. It might be trying to make friends with the situation. That's freeze, fight, flight, and fawn. Freeze, fight, flight, fawn. Those are trauma responses. Okay? So, as you navigate creating while you're healing, you're going to have trauma responses. You're going to have trauma responses because you are trying to navigate your new self that is not living in a trauma state. And since you're not living in a trauma state at this current moment because you are claiming healing, you're moving towards healing, you're doing active healing work, you're transitioning and changing your life, you're going to have to, I'm going to say have to, because I don't think anybody has to do anything. You can do whatever you want, but you get to claim your healing and your creativity in a space and that is free from your trauma by reminding your trauma when it shows up, because it will inevitably. I cannot create with you trying to keep me tied to these old things. I cannot create new things for myself. I cannot create the life that I desire. I cannot create the things that I want. I cannot create the love for myself that I deserve with you reminding me, this mic, that I'm not deserving or that people think I'm not deserving. So how do you do that? Oh man, it's so many ways. This is why you always see me on my yoga mat, being in touch with my body, connecting to my body, because a lot of the trauma that I am working through was physical abuse. So I have to be in contact with my body a lot because other people who did not love my body and did not love me were in contact with my body and they harmed my body. So I had to re-engage and re-establish a relationship with my body that tells my body that I am safe. I am safe. That when Zohar comes and says, body, I want you to do this, that it is a safe space, that I would not endanger myself. And that I understand that my body has been endangered and harmed. And that I treat my body well. The next thing. So once you got some physical activity to help you create or to help you be in touch with yourself and to help you alleviate the triggers, the trauma, and keep you out of fight, flight, fawn, freeze, then you got to work on that inside voice because those voices are so loud. I was just walking and I was thinking about creating something. I've written about 6 books and I want to write another book. I've actually started writing it and it's out of my, normal book. It's not a poetry book. It's not a healing book. It's something else. It's something completely different. And, the other books were easy because I love writing beautiful words and, stating my love for life and stating my love for the earth and stating my love for other people. And I love talking about healing. So those things were like akin to me. They were next to my mind. They weren't hard for me to consider. And so writing them literally, I'm not going to say it didn't take any effort, but it didn't take the effort that this thing is requiring. And this thing is requiring an effort from me that I haven't used yet. And it's requiring me to get out of my way in a new way. And so my internal voice is very loud. It's like, how can you do that? What do you know about that? It's giving me a lot of self-doubt as I dive into this project. And I'm like, yo, I need you, internal voice, to learn how to be supportive in this new creativity, this new creative space that I'm doing while I'm healing, because I know I'm still healing. And so I don't need you to sabotage me while I'm doing this work, because I want to do this work. And while I am working on wanting to do it, I want to learn and have faith and believe that I can do it. And I cannot do that with my internal voice not supporting me. So as my internal voice was talking and it was saying, all these doubtful things, and I had to tell it, hey voice, thanks for your feedback, and no thank you. I cannot create with you talking to me this way. So let's reimagine something that you can do, or a way that you can support me through in this process, because I need to complete this process, and I want to complete this process. I have a desire to do this work, and I know I can do this work. Not that, even though it's uncharted in a way, but I've written 6 books. So I know that I can write a book. I have the skill set. So, voice, let's support me in knowing, hey, you have this, or you know how to do this, or you good at research, right? So I had to really say to my voice and say to myself, hey, I know how to research things. I research things all the time. I look for information all the time. I'm really good at gathering information. I'm really good at connecting dots. I'm really good at patterns. I'm really good at all the things it takes to write a successful book, a successful novel. On the outward side, right? I'm a good writer, and I'm patient with myself. I can put time into something. I know how to put time into something. So let's only focus on that. Now, that inner voice, that inner critic is going to, if yours is like mine, because mine was developed at a very young age by my parental figure, who constantly told me what I wasn't doing correctly. And so when you have an internal voice that is very old, mine has probably been with me since I've been, as I can remember, at the age of 3, being told that I wasn't doing something properly and being screamed and yelled at and given a butt whooping for it. So I'm 47. So my internal voice is 44 years old. And even though I've been doing the healing work, I'm combating my critic, my inner critic, and I've been able to do a lot of things successfully. When you're not hearing your inner critic, you know what it's doing? It's lifting weights. It's in the corner watching you. It's lifting weights. It's just like your trauma. It's in the corner watching you and lifting weights, and waiting for the perfect moment to come and tell you that you're not good enough. And why? Because that's the initial program that interrupted your perfection, that interrupted your design. You came here perfect. You came here beautiful. No matter what the circumstances were that you came here in, you are a perfect being. And then the programming that your parental figure or whoever your caregiver gave you interrupted that perfection, either in a negative way or a positive way. And if you've had as many years as I have had of interruption and reprogramming, and have to combat that reprogramming, then it's going to be some work. Now, my internal voice is nowhere near the juggernaut that it used to be, where I would just sit in gloom and doom and pray for death like I did in my 20s. So we have come a long way. And that's the other thing you get to acknowledge. You get to acknowledge the things that you are doing that have changed, right? I'm not wishing death on myself like I was when I was a 21-year-old, 22-year-old, 23-year-old, because I didn't think that I had integral value, and that I didn't intrinsic value. I'm sorry, that I didn't think that I had intrinsic value, and I didn't deserve to be here. I now know I deserve to be here, and I now know I have intrinsic value. But that doesn't stop that inner critic from doing its job, right? So I'm still working against, maybe not a complete monster, but still a monster, in order to manage myself, in order to move forward on my path. And the other thing is also looking at the things that you do well that are not connected to the thing you're trying to do. Because sometimes that inner voice, it will, that inner critic, it doesn't want to acknowledge all the work that you've done to get where you are, because it hasn't been trained to do that. And that's something that you have to train your inner voice to do. You have to remind your inner voice, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've successfully done that, I've healed this part of my life, I'm no longer abusive in my conversation towards others, whatever you're doing to move forward on your path and to release yourself from your old patterns and your old behaviors, you have to acknowledge out loud. I also like to write those things down. For me, writing things down is almost like writing it on my body or writing it in my head, if that makes sense. Um, Writing has healed so much. Like, even if I have a thought that is negative and I write it down and I cross it out and write, this is not true, this holds no power over me, this thing is a lie, that helps. um, and then making a plan, right? They say, what's the line? um, a good plan. You know what I mean? So I can't think of the quote right now, but yeah, make a plan. Make a plan. I think we get overwhelmed, especially in today's um, environment, and what we're living in today, where everybody is trying to be a millionaire. The whole world is racing to be a millionaire. Everybody wants to be rich, right? Um, and everybody feels entitled to that. We are really, really, especially in America. If you're American, you really feel like that's like within your grasp, because they've done such a beautiful job of selling the American dream to us and making us think that everybody here deserves to have all this access to resources, and you know just the individual thoughts system is doing its job over time. Hey everybody, thanks for joining. um so really, like, why am I doing this thing? What's the plan behind this thing? Why do I have the desire to do this thing? Because if you have the desire, that's the main thing I want you to take away from this. If you have the desire, if you have the desire, you can do it. If you have the desire, you can do it. Now, what does that look like? What sacrifices will you have to make? What will you have to do in order to have that happen? That's a whole nother thing. But that's where the plan comes in play. You plan it. If that means, for me, writing a book in the past, I've literally would say, oh, I'm going to write 4 pages a day or 6 pages a day. Then that's how I get down. Don't matter what it looks like on the page. We're just writing, right? Especially if you have one of these goals where you're trying to do something that is transferring your mental energy into a physical space, just do it. Don't worry about how it looks immediately. That's the one thing I've learned from writing 6 books. Do it and don't worry about how it looks immediately. And especially from teaching yoga and having a website where I provide yoga services. And most of my services are virtual. So most of the times I'm taping things, I'm tweaking them, I'm cutting them out, and I'm recrafting the service or the product in order for it to come out the way that I want. But I'm going to make the mistake. I'm going to let the mistakes show up. Don't try to hide the mistakes. Don't try to keep yourself from making a mistake. It's not a mistake. It's just a part of the process. And I think as you begin to heal, you'll realize that you are not a mistake. Nothing you're doing is a mistake. It's something was set there for you to learn. It's a trigger, a learning trigger, a growth trigger, a lesson. It's not a mistake. And reframing that ideal will help you develop in your action-based work. That's one of the hugest things that I've learned as a teacher, as a practitioner, and in all the things that I do is the mistakes are fine. What we perceive as mistakes, because our human mind is so attuned to perfection, especially here in the West. In America, we really are really big on perfectionism, and we really think that that's the only way to have value in our lives. And it isn't. Those moments where we fail, where we fumble, where we don't quite make it are teaching us so much more than doing it right the first time. Every time I do something and I don't get it right the first time, I learn so much more about myself. I learn so much more about the craft that I'm working on, and I expand myself in a way that I wouldn't have expanded myself had I got it right the first time. I would notice things, right? So then I'm useful in a way, because now I'm teachable. I've learned something, and now I can teach that thing because I have seen the pitfalls, right? I know how things cannot work. I can tell people how things might not work out and how to correct or course correct when they're having those issues. See, and that's like, I don't know, like when I was a kid, they used to have technical schools. By the time I got to high school, they had closed them all down. But they used to have technical schools, like where people go for automotive, um, laundry. I mean, like fixing repair, electronic repair and stuff like that, doing hair and stuff like that. And I was super excited as a kid because I always thought I was going to go and do hair. But by the time I came up, they started making you pay for those schools, and so I didn't go to those schools. I went to college. But the technical schools, I think, taking those things out of our um excuse me, taking those things out of our environment really harmed us because we don't have that growth space anymore. And I think that as a black person in America, I think that is in our part of our DNA, is that kind of growth and work process, especially because we were brought here as laborers, as the labor force for this country. And so we innately know how to labor. We innately know how to labor. It's ancestral. If you, I have picked up so many things that I didn't know how to do, but because of my ancestors, because of my linkage to my ancestors, they were not hard. They were instant. I was literally at the river the other day doing something, and I wanted to go down to this rock that was in the middle of the river. And so I walked down there. Well, I jumped down there because it was a jump. And when I came back up, I slipped on some moss on the rock. And when I slipped, my body reacted in such a way that I hopped over 3 rocks out of the way and made it back up without falling in the water. And I'm sharing that because I do yoga every day, because I practice a practice that allows me to work on my balance every day. Every day. My children, their children, that is in their DNA. That's in their DNA because I was doing this before they were born. That's in their DNA. And their children will have it in their DNA. Their children will innately know how to balance their bodies in difficult situations. I should have been wet or hit my head on a rock, but because I did something that with my body, that I do something with my body every day that prevents me from falling, that prevents me from losing balance. When it came to a space where I needed it, it showed up instantly. I swear to God, I was so shook. Like, and that's exactly how our ancestral stuff works, right? So that's the other thing I want to add to this on your healing journey. A lot of the things that you are desiring are your ancestors' desires. They are not even your desires. They are familial desires that someone in your family came here to do and couldn't get done. They didn't have the time, they didn't have the energy, they didn't have the space, they didn't have the support. And if you are that person that has that, then they give it to you. I've literally been gifted things. I'm going to tell y'all this because I haven't really told anybody this. I remember this was about 15 years ago at this point. Might have been 16. I was in this cult. I was in a cult. I was. And it was a good cult though. It was a cult like about, support and community and and that's why I was attracted to it, because it was really, about supporting people and making sure that everybody were well. And so I was in this cult, and in this cult there was I was on this team, and I was doing this work, and we were doing community work together. And in the community work I met someone, and they were kin by marriage to Richard Pryor, right? So Richard Pryor is like one of my favorite people. I love Richard Pryor. Like, I love this person. Like, I love Richard Pryor so much. Like, I could look at anything Richard Pryor and I could feel his spirit. I could feel him. Like, I innately understand Richard Pryor's life his lifeline without even knowing him as a person. Like, I know what it was to be him. And for a series of nights after having this discussion and telling this person how much I loved Richard Pryor and I was so glad to meet them because they were, married into his family and da 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 da, I had dreams. And Richard Pryor came to my dream every night and would sit with me and tell me jokes. Now, he's been dead at that point, probably for about 10 years when I was having these dreams. And so he would come, and I never dreamed of Richard Pryor before. So he would come and he would tell me jokes, and we would go on roller coasters together. We would eat dinner. We would do all types of things together. Me and Richard Pryor. That's it. And then at the end of the dreams, the last night of the dreams, Richard Pryor told me, he said, "Hey, I still have all this funny." That's what he said. "I have all this talent. I still have all this talent. It's with me. Nobody in my family wanted it. Do you want it? Do you want it? You could be funny. You could be the funniest person on earth. You could be a comedian." And it was scary to me to imagine taking all of that energy from Richard Pryor and using it. I was terrified. And so I told him, "Thank you, but no thank you." But I felt so good, like knowing that this is how I learned that ideal that our ancestors, even our ancestors who are not related to us by blood, can give us things. They can give us talents. They could give us anything they want to give us. This has turned into a whole different talk than I started, but it's all the same thing. And so, he offered me that. I said no, but it was so beautiful to have that experience. And we're all having these experiences. We're all having these enlightenments, as I, like to say. And we get to choose whether or not we want to be a part of them, right? So as you're healing, I'm going to run down the list of things that I said. You're choosing your creativity in your healing space. You have to work on your triggers, knowing your trauma, knowing your fight, fawn, freeze responses. You're going to have to go back to the top of the video to hear all of that. Also, knowing what you can do innately with your physical body to help you with physical trauma. Again, I choose yoga. I choose yoga because yoga is practical for me. It's also, even though people make it sexual, it's not sexual. And because a lot of the abuse that I suffered was sexual, I like to do something that I don't consider sexual or sensual. Even though I have used yoga to express sensuality, I don't mainly use it for that. So, yeah. So get something physical to heal those physical wounds that you've encountered. Also, the inner critic. Learning to quiet your inner critic. I gave a bunch of tips on that, on how to deal with that voice, that incessant voice that talks to you and tells you bad things about yourself, upsets you, makes you feel bad, tries to interrupt your healing process because that's its job. That's what it's been trained to do. And you have to retrain it to support you. You have to do that. Again, I'm in therapy yet again, doing that work, doing that retraining work because I'm taking on something new. And when you're taking on something new, you have to look for support. You can't just keep doing the same thing that you've been doing. You have to find new ways to attack this juggernaut that you're walking around with, right? And then, of course, making a plan and figuring out what it is that you can do, acknowledging the things that you've done on your healing journey that have helped you move forward and that have released you from old patterns, old behaviors. And how do you know it's old pattern, old behavior? Well, mostly it's just gives you the same results. If you're getting the same results that you've always gotten, it's an old pattern. It's an old behavior. If you say you want something new, you have to create something new. You have to do it. I know it sucks that other people harmed you. Other people created this pain in your life, created this trauma in your life. But you're responsible for managing that pain and healing it and keeping it from spreading like a virus to the world and other people. That's your job. That's your job. It's not no one else's job. Um, so I hope y'all enjoyed this. It was good to see you guys. I know I haven't been on in a while. Right now, all of my shop and all the virtual sessions on my virtual classroom are 25% off. No code needed. Go over to my website, www.zohamislight.com, and check a sister out. Buy you some crystal jewelry, get you some classes because they're up there. All right, y'all. Talk to you later. Have a good rest of the week. Peace.